creative friction.
Yeah.
Creative friction is what the goal is, right? Like we're able to work through the disagreement and hear each other and like not shut it down. But I think that just all goes back to like, you know, generational, but also like as a man, as a black man, right? Like if I don't talk about emotions, and I'm certainly not thinking about my own and like the process for anybody else, and like it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. You're pushing in places where discomfort is not the place people want to be in right now, and that's a hard thing to do, I think. And I guess I think for me at this point, when it comes to family, and it's sort of worked out, is that I just let go and kind of like my hope. It's how I run life. I think is I have this faith that it's gonna get better. But nothing gets better when you push it, right? Like it's the things that happen naturally and organically that are meant to happen the way they're supposed to happen. And you can't push people into things, and you can't push moments into places that they're not meant to be at the time. Like you can only plant the seed and believe and let it go. And like you've done that at this point, and I think it's like having faith that you believe it can be better. And sometimes that's all that it needs to be. I want to do a live show with someone I'm trying to interview who is a comedian who does traumedy. So it's mainly, she herself is a Yemenese immigrant who came here during the first war in Yemen and escaped, and she has her story is all about just how she late in life during COVID decided to start comedy and stand-up comedy, and used her trauma experiences to put stories in comedic ways and find laughter in it. And now she does these troupes that she does a lot of shows with multiple different comedians who do traumedy, and they talk about trauma and comedy all together, and so it's pretty cool. So I'm hoping to interview her and have a set and do it live somewhere in DC in the next few months.
That's dope.
When it comes together.
That's dope.
So I think it'll be kind of cool.
I'm here for it. Well, welcome back to another episode of Mental Health Monday, here with Brown Girl Interrupting. How are you? Welcome.
Awesome.
Here with my host, Jorie. What's up? What's good? How you doing? The handshake we've been working on.
Glad to be here with you today.
Nice to meet you.
All right, so tell me about Pain to Power.
Pain to Power is a talk show that I host that is elevating the stories of individuals that I have met along the way, or I meet in life, or I am brought to from other people who have gone through things in life. They've gone through pain, they've gone through challenges, or they've experienced and watched it in others, and they have chosen to heal themselves. They've chosen to find their own center and grounding. And then they take it to the next level, which is that they have built tools through their artistry, through their knowledge, through their businesses, whatever ways, to help others. And so Pain to Power elevates those stories of how they've gotten to where they are, what drives them, what motivates them, how they found their own healing, and then what they are doing to give tools to others to find their healing and grounding. And so the purpose is to really heal in community and to be a part of storytelling together.
What's more important, the pain or the power?
Or is it like the chicken and the egg?
I think it's the chicken and the egg, right? Yeah, I think it's the chicken and the egg, because I think oftentimes power is born through challenges. We have to overcome things to learn the lessons to where we can then see the beauty and see the strength within us, the struggles to strength, right? And it doesn't always happen that way, but I think there is something very transformational in that process. And so power without some pain and struggle is not always as deep sometimes, and I think pain, when we only sit in it and don't find the power, is going to drown us. So you need both.
What was it like starting a talk show? Like, how did that go?
Great question.
So I didn't totally start fresh. I was actually first on someone else's show as a co-host, kind of similar to you guys, where I was sharing my story and like healing and she was the spiritual guru. So I was kind of like already in this space of like, well, I talk about stuff. And then I just felt like I needed to do something more and elevate these stories, and it was scary. It was really scary because my daytime job is I was a classroom teacher, and at the time I had just only started a new position where I train adults in conversations on race and equity. So I had conversations all the time, but to have them on a screen and have a talk show and have a plan for it and then find guests to interview was a lot. And I started off, I don't know if I shared this with you in our last interview, but I started off with TikTok stalking.
Okay.
I remember the research.
Very impressive. TikTok stalking. I literally was just like, I need to have a show. I want to interview people. Who do I interview? And someone said, well, who do you know that's famous? And I was like, well, I don't really know anybody that's famous, but I follow a bunch of people on TikTok, and there's this one guy who followed me back. So maybe I'll just keep seeing if he wants to be interviewed. And I did. I just slid into the DMs. I slide in networking wise, and that was he agreed. He took a chance on me, and I started with his big TikTok following, and we the whole first episode was messy. So if you go on my website, you'll see it starts off a little choppy because we started on TikTok, but then realized that I couldn't be live on TikTok without 1,000 followers, and so I couldn't actually be on TikTok, so we had to in the middle of the starting had to shift to a YouTube channel, which my amazing producer of the iRent network was able to figure out. And all those people that were on TikTok came on, so my first show had 99 views at the time because he brought people that were following him. And that was it, and it started with that, and then all my for most of my first season I was just sending DMs and finding people. So that was probably the hardest part, was finding the content for it is hard with talk shows, especially if it's not just two people who I love this, right? You can come together and you two could talk and you could have a whole show just there, right? But then to find a guest is a whole other thing. So.
Yeah. So the name Brown Girl Interrupting, right? I'm correct. That's the whole thing, right?
That's it.
Tell me about that.
So prior to the talk show, Brown Girl Interrupting was born in 2020 when I started writing. And I created my own website. And the writing was my story of pain to power, essentially. I didn't call it that, but it was my healing from a 17-year marriage that was difficult, from trying to be a single mom after a lot of damage in co-parenting, and just being a cultural, who I was. So Brown Girl Interrupting was because my story is I'm a brown girl, and for me it's actually the most confusing part of my story. I don't know my brownness very well because I am a daughter of immigrants. My parents were born in Pakistan and Bangladesh, and then they came here, and they weren't even originally supposed to stay here, but there was a war a civil war between both their countries, and that's why they couldn't go back home. So they ended up living in America, had 4 children, one of which was me, and my whole life I've struggled with being in this space of cultural straddling, which is that I'm this one person at home. I'm supposed to be this one person at home, but then I go out in the world and I'm in public school and I'm in America and I'm surrounded by all these white people, and it's so different. So I was always trying to be both. So being brown was something I've always constantly been trying to discover about myself and understand what it means for me, because of my journey. And then just being a woman, I'm a mom, I was a wife, I'm a daughter. All of those are different roles we play in different places that I find myself navigating the world and trying to figure it out. And I'm an interrupter. I'm an interrupter. Like from the time I was little, like I questioned things all the time. I was always like, I'm not the rule follower. I'm the one who always like bends the rules and wants to find the loopholes. And like I'm an interrupter. In my day job, I teach people to interrupt systemic racism. Like it's what I do. So to me, I mean, it was also a play on words, let's be honest. Like, from girl interrupted, I liked the sound of that, and then I was like, but I'm a brown girl, and I'm not interrupted, I'm interrupting. So that's where that came from.
All right. Since we last talked, that was a hell of an interview. I just want to let you know that. I think about that quite often. Like, damn. Because, I mean, getting to know people is nice. But it's different when you can tell that people are trusting you with moments that they wouldn't regularly open up about, especially in a whole conversation versus, oh, that happened. And then it's like, all right, so you like cheesesteaks? I like cheesesteaks. Let's go get a cheesesteak.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So I know about pain to power, but people that haven't been on this side don't understand pain to power. So who are you in the story that you tell?
In Pain to Power, or in
your everyday story?
In life, in my everyday story,
Mm-hmm.
not mine.
Yeah.
I think I'm someone who is navigating the same thing as just about everybody else, but is just very heightenedly aware of how all the pieces fall together and the complexities of them, and I'm constantly analyzing them and putting words to them.
Okay.
I think that's who I am in my story, and I think my Pain to Power journey is it's almost like I experienced life, right? Like life has challenges, and everybody has challenges, and some a lot more than others, right? And I think it's like this. My journey has been one where I figured out my survival in the moments, not knowing that that was going to be what was going to feed this next chapter and path of like what Pain to Power is, which is now to help others to figure out their navigation and survival mode, and not just survival, but like how to move through it to find their power. And some of that is my story, but really a lot of it is finding people around me who have those stories and elevating for others to hear, because I believe in the power of storytelling. It's part of my work, right? The power of storytelling is a counter. It's critical race theory is one of the ideas of how we can truly start to dismantle some of the systemic barriers that are there, is that to see the humanity in each other and know each other's stories, the truth of those stories. And I think that's Pain to Power, is knowing our true stories.
How many interviews have you done on Pain to Power in terms of your platform? Do you know what episode you're at right now?
Well, I'm season 4, episode 5 tomorrow.
Okay.
It's very exciting.
Congrats.
And it's exciting because I've got someone who reached out to me who was on my episode. He or she was in season 2 and now asked to come back for season 4 to share some new elements of life. And she's talking about wild femininity and the audacity of pain.
Mm-hmm.
But so every season I do about 22, 23 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a math person. So I'm going to go season 3. So I've done 3 full seasons of about I guess I would say like 65, 66, 67. Yeah, 67 episodes, and then plus 5. Yeah, right. So.
What does that number represent to you?
Evolution. Evolution in there's the one piece of just me and where I started my place of Pain to Power, because it was so different when I started, and it was just this tiny little seed and idea, and it's how things blossom and grow right from they go from a tiny seed to reality. But also I think evolution in that as I have interviewed people, I have learned my own ways to get through life, because life keeps happening. So even just these last 2, since season 4 started, life has been hitting hard. And I would get on the show and I would have these conversations, and it wasn't just for my audience, it was for me in the moment too. I was like, oh, that's a great point. That's gonna help us heal. So that that also, that piece of like my own healing evolution at the same time as helping others to heal, at the same time as like elevating these amazing individuals that others may not know about doing wonderful work.
So what would you say the purpose of Pain to Power is in telling other people's story?
One, it's seeing the humanity in everyone that may not necessarily have the same story as you, that may not necessarily have the same experiences as you. And that's, I think, embedded from like my work in race and equity, and just this idea that I think part of the reason is we continue to oppress others and we continue to marginalize people is because we don't see people as human. And when you don't see people as human, as feeling, and you disconnect from them, you don't have that empathy. So I think that's one big piece of it, is seeing the human side of everyone. And then the other thing is that like sometimes it's that we see the end product of where everybody is, but we don't know and understand the journey in which they came to get there. So I think that's a lot of it, is it's not just the power part and it's not just the pain part. It's the idea that we go through things, learn things, heal ourselves, and then some people make those choices to move forward with those things and to heal others. And that's the power part. It's how we find our power in ourselves, but also then how those individuals have now helped others. So I think like that's the big thing. And it's through the storytelling, and it's through the honesty, and it's through like a real conversation. So it's not like we're sitting in, I hate to call it an interview. I always call it a dialogue or a conversation, or like, and I don't call it a podcast for that reason either. I call it like a talk show, because I feel like we're talking, right? So, and that's my goal. And I will say, just as a side note, like my season 2, this episode 2 of this past season, the guest I had reposted a clip, and she said it was like sitting on the couch with a dear friend in a deep dialogue conversation. And she's in Texas, but we're on a screen together, right? And like that to me is the ultimate moment of like showing that this is the goal. The goal is for the other person across the screen, despite being across the screen, to feel that connection, and then for the audience to feel like we're all in this together in this conversation.
When it comes to the interviews that you've put together and the stories that you've told, how much of yourself do you see in the content?
And it depends. Sometimes it's not just myself, like it's people in my life. So I think that kind of counts as myself, right, in some way, and that it impacts me, it touches me. But I think there's always just like that universal experience that we have as humans. Take away race, take away identity, take away culture, take away gender, take away all of all things, and we have universal pain and universal joy and universal triumph, right? Like, and that always resonates with me when I interview someone, because I can pick a moment where I'm like, oh yeah, that I've experienced that before, right? Or like I can have a moment where I hear something that actually pushes and tests me in like my own journey of like, oh wow, I do that. Oh my gosh, like I've been doing that. Like I've been the culprit of that behavior, and now I need to undo it. So I think in that ways, right, like there's some universal things that we as humans go through, and that's what it connects me with the people that I'm interviewing with, even though we can come from very different spaces, right? And different upbringings, and that is mine. Like most of the people I interviewed have very different lives than mine, but there's that connection that just resonates. And yeah.
So I know empathy is like a huge part of the storytelling process. How has empathy been for you as a person, being empathetic?
I definitely think I'm naturally been very empathetic as a person. Like, I was always that kid who wasn't like, super empathetic, but I had empathy, and I always kind of like considered people around me for the most part. But I think I have, as an adult, had to learn that we almost give like this like prize to ourselves or to others, even like for the extreme empathy, but that empathy comes at a cost to the person. So there's like that martyrdom almost, like that it's unhealthy, right? Like, so what's the boundary between being empathetic but also holding space for yourself so that you don't lose yourself in your empathy and you don't give too much of yourself in trying to be there for others? And that's been like a learning place for me.
Tell me more.
So I don't know if that answered your question. But like, yeah, like, so, you know, particularly like, and I talked about this when we interviewed last time, is, you know, as a mother. Mm-hmm. I'm a mother of 4 children.
Yeah.
And proudly, but also complexly, right? Like, in a really hard way. Like, and 3 grown men now, but, you know, they're boys, and in a tough dynamic of co-parenting. So I've always had counter messages being told to my children and had to counter them from that. But in that, they're their own people. They have their own needs and their own desires and their own paths. And I think that there was a time where I was like gonna do everything to make things better for them. I was going to try to, and I did sacrifice my own happiness. Like, that's what we do when you're empathetic. In the same way in relationships, I did the same thing. I was married for 17 years, and I did a lot of sacrificing myself. And I kind of was like, oh, but look at all I'm giving, right? That's what we do. And I think particularly women have that mentality because we're naturally raised to be nurturers. And I watch it in like my 8-year-old daughter now. Like, it's almost like a tendency to like take care of everything and everyone around you. But the empathy boundary piece is that I don't do it beyond what is actually like, I think for me it's like, if I don't feel like you are actually accepting what I'm giving you and valuing it, right? Whatever that looks like. But you value my time, my words, my, you know, just my presence. Then I'll be present. But if I don't feel that value, then it's not like I'm angry at you. I just have a boundary out there, like, okay, well then we'll scale back a little bit, right? So with my children, I had to do that. I had to like scale back. I had been like, you know, you don't want me around. You don't want to talk to me. You don't want to share things with me. That's cool. Like, go do what makes you happy. But then I have a little bit of a boundary up here in that I'm not reaching out more. I'm not going to keep pushing to have a relationship with you when you are not holding on to that the same way I am. And that's an unpopular opinion. Culturally for my family, like actually my younger sister, I just had a conversation with me where she said, like, I'm glad you held your own because everybody said you were being too mean. But now look, your children are back in your life. And on their will, not because I pushed them to be with me. But a lot of that was me learning my boundary between giving too much and actually like realizing that some people just need a break from that and they need to figure things out themselves, and you can't keep giving when it's depleting you.
Yeah, so I want to kind of challenge like how we're defining empathy, because my understanding of empathy was just like you can understand what the other person is feeling and why they are maybe behaving in a certain way, but it doesn't go beyond, like, you don't have to do anything. Whereas like a lot of times it's compared to sympathy, where it's like you're feeling sorry for somebody or you pity them. But I think what you're describing is a little bit further, like you are understanding and then trying to intervene and do more, and I don't know what the word is for that. Maybe it's like it's more than generous. It's
yeah. And I don't know. I mean, but I think it is like that. You can look at it differently. So I think, and it is that, right? Like it's empathy in and of itself is that. But maybe I'm thinking like when you're an empathetic person, there's a difference of like how we show up when you're an empathetic person versus just holding empathy.
So
I don't know
you
if
think
there's a
of
difference
it.
there.
You think of it as empathy existing versus empathy doing that, right? The action behind the words empathy. Because most folks, I agree with you. Most folks, when they say I'm empathetic, like you'll see a homeless person that's on the street and be like, "Hey, can I have change?" Be like, "I'm sorry, I don't have it." But you feel for their situation even though you don't have it. For you, you're like, "All right, I'll give you $1. You want some oranges? I got some oranges, man. So what are you doing tomorrow? All right, cool. I got some bottles of water.
Right.
You taking care of yourself? I got some soap. I got some soap at the house. I'll see you next week." And I think I have this rule, and you've heard me say it before. Hey, be careful where you bleed and how much bleeding you do when it comes to the work that we do, because the work that we do is a very giving work that we kind of have to be careful of, because like we can't get the work we would like to done when it comes to outreach, telling people stories, and caring about people if it's at the price of we're crying every time we attempt to help people because it's so heavy feeling for their situation.
Yeah.
So technically you have to pick and choose how much of yourself you give to the work and what your cutoff point is, so you're able to give more and not be destroyed by why aren't things becoming better for the person.
Yes.
So,
or even like how you said, like, yeah, my kids are their own people.
Yeah.
And so,
So
yes, they're going to have to do whatever they need to do, and then they will come back. Like, I feel like that's very empathetic. But to try and, like, go and, like, pay their rent or, like, buy their food and, like, get them a car. Like,
I'm going to do all these things, and they're going to come back. And you're kind of like, no, I gotta let them fly.
But you know, it's really hard to not do that, though.
Yeah.
It's really hard not to do that.
Yeah.
Particularly for your own kids, right? Especially as a mom, right? Like I think that there's, and I don't know, maybe it isn't the language of empathy, but I think like that's that dynamic though of that comes from maybe the root of empathy.
Yeah.
And it starts there, and when we don't understand that empathy can end at, I feel that you have pain. I understand that you have pain. I recognize and I validate that pain, but I don't have to hold that pain. That's a different thing. And I think my learning, going back to your first question, like that was my learning, because I think I was I was mixing those two up for a while, and thinking that it also meant then I have to sacrifice things for you to be happy, right? Like then your happiness is more important than my happiness, which isn't empathy, but it kind of became it maybe for me. I don't know, like I'm processing it. I'm like, God, you gotta be thinking. And it could be semantics, like it could be the word I'm using is not the right word, but I guess when I think of it, that's what I was thinking.
Well, I mean, we're here to talk about your experience.
Yeah,
and I think you're giving us great info about that.
One thing that I've kind of become more interested in is, you know, from my work as a pediatrician and I interact with a lot of Black families. There seems to be this pride in sacrifice that Black mothers have, and I just wonder where that comes from. Is that something that is present in all motherhood across cultures, or is it specific to certain cultures? Because I mean, some families, like, you know, Caucasian families, they have their nanny, they go and do their things, they have their businesses, they have their careers, and I don't really hear the same, like, I gave up everything for you, you know, child, you owe me this type of thing. Like, what are your thoughts about that?
I think there's some culture connection there, right? Like I'm not a Black woman, I'm not raised by Black women, so I'm not going to speak on the behalf of, but I do think like there's a real cultural connection. I think that's kind of what I was getting at, is that there's this this role of mothers that is different gender-wise than a role of fathers, of naturally being nurturers, and then that like you become that person who's giving so much, who's doing so much, and you're like, but look, I'm doing this, right? Like then that is the role that you become. And I feel like there's a lot of cultures and communities that then applaud you for that. Look at you, that makes you a good mom. that makes you a good mom because you're sacrificed. Like that's what you're supposed to do, right?
Yeah,
You're supposed to.
Yeah.
And so you internalize it as this is then what I'm supposed to do. And now if I don't do it, one, I'm not a good mom. And then I'm not doing enough, and then my kids are going to fail. Like it's this fear, like my kids are going to fail if I don't do the things for them, if I don't make sure that I'm sacrificing everything of mine. And me, I come last.
Yeah.
And we sacrifice our own mental health. And it's a cultural thing, but I would say like I've seen it across universally. Like I think I look at it as it becomes a like almost a role of being a mother, and the gender and the like and not, I know there's gender nonconformity, like I think, but there is like this thing that I have seen in patterns around me of women just being natural nurturers. And that combined with then the expectation that you're supposed to be giving to everybody like becomes really dangerous. And but I was talking to someone, like I think that like we've almost been conditioned to put our mental health to the side, right? Like our needs, our things. And I was like, I think what happens is, I don't see it happen with men the same way, but women will give up taking care of themselves as the very first thing to give up. So you asked me about my week. What I didn't do this week was eat any proper meals. What I didn't do this week was sleep properly. What I didn't do this week was exercise. What I didn't do this week was go out and get any fresh air. But I did go to my job, show up for my job, make sure that my daughter had every little tiny activity she could possibly have to make her happy in the 1 week she was with me. Make sure my son had everything he needed to feel like he was seen and validated and had a place like where he felt comfortable, right? Like, and my friends and my coworkers, I'm like, so who goes to the back burner?
You do.
The women do. Like I do, but but like that's the thing, right? And I think you add on then to that's the like overall narrative that happens. Then you add culture and race, and depending on your culture and race, it's different. Like I think for Black women, there's a history of like just the impact of enslavement and the way families were torn apart. Like I don't think you can speak on that without talking about the generational patterns, right? Like so I do think there's a distinct difference of being a Black woman and having that role and feeling the pressure of that. But then I do see that same pressure and expectation on being a brown woman. And in my culture, as a Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Muslim woman, and being raised by my family, it's more of your children just come first. Like, and you, that's selfish. It's selfish to think of yourself. And so I was always given that narrative. And so it was hard to put up a boundary with my own kids because I'm being, in the back of my mind, I'm countering this message of, you're being so selfish, Maria. Like, that's about you and not about them. And like, what if something happens to them and then you're the one to blame? And like, that whole like narrative in your mind. So I hope that answers your question. But I feel like that was like, like it's layered. Yeah. It's layered.
I have a follow up too. So with this, you're raising your kid for 18 to 22 years if you go through college, right? And then your kid flies away from the nest and you're left alone and you're wondering why your kid isn't calling you all the time, right? Like now you're putting your burden of sacrifice throughout the last 2 decades onto your child. It's like, no, like, your child has to live their own life. Like, how do you recommend people deal with that boss? I mean, it's kind of a grieving process, right? Like,
it is a grieving process. I don't, I think like, my kids don't all call me. One lives with me, it's different. Like if they live with me, then I see and talk to them often. But I think because we become a role in kids' lives, we don't build relationship. And I think it's such a difference to have a relationship with your kid than to just be their mother.
Yeah.
And all those other things of that empathy, and not empathy, but all the things where we feel like we need to sacrifice and be and do, that's I'm action. But I don't like know my kids. think kids don't call their moms because they don't want to call their moms. They're busy in their lives. It's like, well, if this isn't like someone like, I'm calling you because, oh my God, Mom, this happened. Like the same way you call your friends. You don't have to be reminded to call your friends. You call them because you're reminded of something that you want to talk to them about. Like you have a relationship with them. And if I were to give advice to parents now, is build a really authentic, true relationship with your kid. One where you're human and they're human. You're not a robot who just performs and does and shows up and gives them things and provides them pathways and opportunities. You are a human. Some days you can't. Some days you cry, and I do that now with my daughter. I do it more with my sons. I've learned so many lessons. I mean, my oldest is 24, so I've had a lot of lessons along the way. And now with my 8-year-old, like, I have had moments, and I've talked about this on the podcast, I've had moments where I was like, Mom can't do it. Like this, right now, all I can do is sit here and cry, and I love you, but I can't read a book to you right now. I can't make dinner right now. Like, I just need to be me in my fallibility. And there's something about that creates this, like, bond between children. Because I do that, but then I also find joy in moments. Like, and it's like a balance of everything, but it's relationship building.
I learned from Brene Brown a couple years ago that you need vulnerability to build connection, right? And that goes for your kids too.
It's for everything. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You're preaching to the choir. That I told you about me not going home, right?
Not going home when?
For Christmas or Thanksgiving. All right, so I'm not going home for Christmas or Thanksgiving. I'm technically in the middle of a breakup with my parents because I told them, like, hey, I want my family back. Like, this thing that we have right now, this isn't family. This is what really close coworkers who've known each other for a very long time looks like. And we've stopped working on our relationship with each other a long time ago. It's my fault and it's their fault, but we do need drastic changes sometimes to be the ignition into, hey, we need to do better. So the trade-off I'm doing with my parents right now, and I offered this to my mom, but my mom and dad don't communicate well. And I found out from my sister, my dad just doesn't communicate well also in general, is I would rather they pick 3 dates on the calendar and I go home for 3 days per week that they chose to hang out with them, be around, be available, and we do things together, versus coming through on Thanksgiving and Christmas. And it now becomes this heavy weight where we have to talk about everything important that they feel towards me has to be on this one day. So I don't like holidays with my parents. And I love my parents. It's not about the love thing. It's about where do I find anxiety and what am I looking forward to? Like, going home, I shouldn't look forward to, I bet if we argue, I can win in this argument here, here, and here. And after that, we could go, yo, pass me the hand. That's not good. I shouldn't be strategizing about how to insult my mom politely. You feel what I'm saying? I shouldn't be strategizing on how do I let my dad down softly because he just doesn't understand where I'm coming from. And I think that also comes from the lack of availability for you not being in front of people when it comes to me being in DC, me being away from New Jersey and everything else. And then just bringing up other observations that I've realized, like, hey, we may be the family members that are too good to go to other people's family events. Like, as much as I'm Jamaican and my family members are in, like, New York, Florida, Atlanta, Texas, California, we don't often get on a plane just to go see them and be like, hey, how have you been? I miss you. We'll pick up the phone every now and then, but the phone is limited. I hear your voice and that's about it. Especially when you're in a family who, my mom does Jamaican gospel concerts in places like Connecticut, Atlanta, Florida, New York, Boston. You see the correlation of you're willing to travel for business but not for family.
Wait, your mom sings?
No, she doesn't sing. She manages artists. She manages a lot of Jamaican artists that are in England and Jamaica that come back and forth between the East Coast of the U.S. and Jamaica. in England. So yeah, like some of them they'll stay in my room. But this is business that I've known of for years. But it's like there's something to be said when your family starts to pick up on the fact that you're willing to move for money, but you're not willing to move for love. And it translates differently. Like you may not get invited to weddings. You may not have a relationship with your cousins like you're supposed to. You may be seen as the family member that's available and always doing something great, but not with us. And you got to be careful of setting that standard. So that's what we're working on now.
So in your adulthood, have you tried to, change that? Like you go visit your family in Florida or California? Or,
No, not necessarily, because interviews, there's a sacrifice that comes from us doing what we do, that we love, that we're passionate about, right? So we're going to miss out on birthday parties, whether it's with friends or family, right? We're going to have something that's scheduled that says, hey, I wish I could go to happy hour with you guys, but I have this thing that I've really been looking forward to, that I've been doing research on. So if I don't do it, it's not going to get done, because we understand we are the driving force behind the things that we've made. And then when you do have time, what you tend to find sometimes is we are so tired from all the effort that we've given that we don't really understand, oh, we missed out on a lot of things in this calendar year because of our drive to get the other stuff done. So now that I'm more aware of that, like my cousin just got a house in Texas. I had to talk with my dad. He was like, yeah, Sam hit us up, said, we need to come to the house in Texas, but your mom's pushing back. I said, I'll be in Texas next year for Christmas. He said, yeah, I feel the same way too. It's like, but it's no longer good enough for you to feel the same way. You need to voice it out loud and stand your ground and act on your feelings. Because as an adult, especially the people who are married, they tend to be like, well, I don't want to cause conflict. And it's like, your marriage is only going to grow as far as you want it to. You got to be the one to always push the walls out. That's why you have things like home renovation. You need new things to happen to the house for you to feel like this is really home, not just a roof that you happen to be under. And I'm the same way with a lot of my relationships now.
But I think what you're asking for is for people to lean into discomfort. And that's a hard thing. Like, I was wondering when you said that to me, because at first, kudos to you for speaking your truth to your family. Like, I think that's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to bring to light things that culturally aren't spoken about in a home and in family dynamics. So like to say that what we're doing is, it sounds like almost like it's performative, right? It's not really like a relationship the same way as you're hoping for it to be.
I think it's the representation of a relationship with anxiety versus love is what it's become. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's something wrong when we've normalized that and that's all we ask for from each other. Like, when I say I want my family back, I sound like the dad who's going through a divorce. I want my family back. And it's like, no, I remember who we were before life did these things to us. But I also got to remember, hey, what part did you play? Like, you did pro trials for football for 7 years. Your sacrifice was, you're not going to see your family for 7 years. After pro tryouts, you had like a 1.5 year period. Your significant other passes away. And then you start a mental health organization. So that's what the other 8 years are after. So for my family, there's this wall of, well, he's doing something to get through his grief. But for me, it's like I've never out loud asked you guys to give me distance. I've asked you guys to understand what I'm doing. But I do want to know, hey, who's getting sick? I do want to know what's the medical thing that's happened. I do want to know, why are you going to work so much for every holiday, and why aren't you able to just take one day off to stay with your family? Like, where does this urgency come from? Because if you miss one day of work, it's actually not going to make that big of a difference. But if you're not allowed to give yourself permission for that, all right, well, what do you expect of your loved ones when you ask them, in terms of my mom, to come home and you're never available because you're always at work, but you say, well, you're not around enough. It's like, well, even if I drove 300 miles from DC to New York or New Jersey or whatever, and I'm in the living room and you're never available, is it going to make a difference whether I'm around or not when you're not around now and you live here? So it's like, little things like that is what kind of goes into, all right, no more Thanksgiving or Christmas. But I'd rather give you guys 18 days of my life a year versus one day where it's all the topics. And it's like, no, if you can't do more with 18 days, what do I have to give, or what do we need to start working on to get back to who we used to be, or at least trying to like figure out what do our relationships with each other actually look like now, instead of the assumptions that we have a great relationship with each other.
So is that part of it, like what you just said, what does it look like now? It's almost like you've all done your changes and you're trying to
just relearn each other.
You have to relearn each other. Like,
Yeah,
it's almost like we can't start at the same place we were at this point to have a relationship.
Yeah, you're never gonna get that back.
Because I'm not that person anymore. You're not that person anymore. None of us are those people.
Yeah.
Where does trust and safety come in that building back? Like, I think sometimes with distance, those are the things that can start to be worn down. Is that same level of safety to show up authentically, and that same like trust to like you really, and not that you don't trust your family, but I think there's a difference in like, I trust you with my authentic self being safe around you versus I trust you, but like we stay at this place in our trust. Does that lead into any of this for you? I'm curious.
A little bit. Like when my mom or my dad say things like, "I've never raised you like that." It's like 18 is the cutoff point for you guys raising me. That means after that, I start to go out into the world and I pick things. I'm like, oh, I like that. I'll take a little bit of that. But when you take a little bit of something, you're also like, oh, this thing that I've taken doesn't match well with who I've been, so I need to let go of these other things. And when it comes to trust and safety with them, like, I told my sister this the other day, I was like, I don't trust my dad. I believe in him, and I think he's a great person, but I've seen him cross boundaries with me multiple times, right? Like, I had a best friend of mine who I fell out with after my friend passed away, and he took it upon himself when I finally got to see my friend and we were in Home Depot shopping to be like, well, Juice has an issue with you because this, and this, and you guys need to talk. And I looked at him and I was like, yeah, I'm frustrated with this person, but who are you to dictate the terms of what us healing and being close with each other again looks like? Or maybe we should just break up and that's okay. You don't get to speed ramp things because you feel uncomfortable with us figuring things out. But then I took it another step forward and I was like, what made him think I'd be okay with that? I was like, I don't need to have a conversation with him about it because he's done what he's done. And I did talk to him about it, but I just remember his frustration with, you guys just need to be friends. And it's like, and it's okay for friends to break up.
On the other side of that though, Juice, can you understand maybe he felt like he was looking out for you, like he wanted?
Oh, definitely. Not even. He cared. In that moment, he cared, but that's not what I needed from him in that moment. Betrayal of, like, trust between parents and kids is actually very delicate when you get older. Because it's like, your parents are going to fight for you, but it's like, fam, my style of fighting may not be what you taught me when I was younger. So, like, I didn't fall out with my friend simply because he wasn't there for me anymore. I fell out with my friend because we had talks of if things ever get hard, we would be there for each other. And when things got hard, he was watching me from a distance, be in pain. No reach outs, no calls, no text messages. And I had to deal with what that looked like. No adults asked me, well, what did you go through for why you guys aren't cool? The focus became, why are you guys no longer friends? Not what happened to you in that time. Which for adults, that's different topics. So even after that happened, when I finally explained it to my dad, he was focusing on, let's get to the end of the convo so I could say my piece and still not listening to, well, this is what happened. And in that moment, I was like, I'm not going to teach you this. Like, you got to at least try. If you don't try, I'm not going to be like, well, you didn't try. I'm going to be like, oh, I just have to move differently. And that's not who he is.
He was not understanding that you don't need somebody to fight for you in the way that he did.
Yeah, and it's not even, oh, I'm a grown man. No, I appreciate when people step up, but I also tell people, hey, there are certain things that will happen to me, and I'll be like, hey, don't get overly invested in this, because like the way I'm gonna deal with this isn't the way you would think. So don't do anything that would put you in a compromising position.
Yeah.
It sucks, but hey.
But that's a real honest thing of like the dynamic of parents and children, I think, is not being heard in who you are now. And like this idea, like, and it goes back to that stuff of like parents wanting to control your narrative a little bit more without knowing really what your narrative is. And I think that's like a big disconnect, and sometimes why kids don't stay in touch with their families, because maybe like I've gone off this other place and I don't feel safe enough fully showing up as myself with you. And I don't think you genuinely really care who that self is. And like then I don't. What we're gonna talk about? And the reason I like applaud you for that too, Joe, is like I had a moment like that with my mom a few years ago where I was like, yeah, this surface level relationship we have, I don't want to do it anymore. Like I don't have any surface relationships. So to have one with my mother was like, no, like why are you keeping me at a distance? And for you it's okay because like I'm in her life still, we're still talking, right? And for me it's like this discomfort and trust issue, and that I had to say to her, and I will say like it took a lot to say that to my mother. That's why I understand like to say that to your family is a lot, like, but at the same time I saw her finally starting to open up and see a perspective she had never thought about before. And I think that's what it is you're creating a space. How long it takes and how much work it takes is different, but just to create the space for a new perspective is really powerful and brave, because we don't do that.
Yeah. And then also battling assumptions. If you make yourself more available to people, they'll understand, oh, that's what your busy looks like, that's why you haven't been making calls. Like I was when I was home to vote a couple weeks back, my dad saw how many people were texting me, how many emails I had coming in, how many things I was editing, and he was like, so that's what your day looks like? Like you're just in one spot doing all that work often? And I said, yeah, I have certain days that are free, but if it's not free, if I'm busy, this is what busy looks like. Me changing out laptops or changing out books or making sure, checking the calendars, or if I have a talk, that is what the conversations sound like. Like there was one time he heard a convo that I had with someone else giving him advice, and he was like, why do you talk to them like that? And I was like, they call me because they need to hear those words. They don't call me to hear fluff. They call me to hear an honest feedback on what's going on and what that advice might look like for them. If not, they wouldn't call me for that. We've had great combos, but today when they call me, it was about this. That's what they need to hear. I was like, we're friends because of that. I was like, and if not, well, I'm glad they're doing well without me. That's just how I treat it. He said,
That, and then like, so it's opening new way of seeing things, right? And seeing you for the first time, like that's not first time, but like parts of you that otherwise aren't seen, and that's like the powerfulest thing, right? Vulnerability is a big thing with validation too, right? Like that's how we stay connected, is we validate each other for our authentic selves of who that is. Not who I want you to be, not who I thought you were, but who you are. We don't get to that though a lot.
It's just hard for certain people. And I get why it's hard for certain people. For those who it's not hard for, I think seeing where the other party is coming from is probably the hardest part. Like, hey, and make sure to like treat them according to it. Like how you asked, are you aware? You didn't use the word care, but that's how his care looked like. I'm always aware of that. I know other people, it's like, nah, man, forget that. Slaps everything off the desk. But for me, it's like, nah, I love slapping things off the desk. but before I open up my mouth to respond, like not every piece of meat needs to be cut. You get what I'm saying? Sometimes you do have to just chew on things and figure out where it is before, all right, where do I take this dish? And that's how I treat a lot of my relationships. Like, what's the ingredients that we're working with? Like, for my mom, bless her heart, she works the way that she works because she doesn't trust anybody, right? And when I say she doesn't trust anyone, her suggestions that she makes of me when it comes to jobs, when it comes to money, when it comes to security, in her mind, it's, I don't want him to not be able to trust folks because he himself isn't sufficient, right? That's from her assumptions, but like, I make enough money to take care of what I need to, whether it's emergencies or not emergencies. I make enough money to get around, and you know, all the equipment we have, you know, that thing's expensive. The price point on everything is crazy.
Yeah.
It's like, but that means like, either my unavailability or my decision making, I have gotten the things that I want, but do you know what it is that I want and what I'm working on? So for you, you might see it as, oh, he's just really busy. But for my community over here, it's like, nah, he's done so much. We've had these interviews. I'm finally able to tell my story. I was finally able to be honest with my family about what I'm going through. I was finally able to get help. I was finally able to get the things that I was never able to get. And he was the push for that, which I've been finding out a lot these last couple of years. I've helped a lot of people that I wasn't aware of. But for her, she's like, well, if you spend all your time there, what about when things go wrong? It's like, if I focused on when things go wrong for the majority of the picture, I would lock myself in a room. And that'd be it. And it's like, you can't lock yourself in a room. You need sunlight, you need to eat correctly, you need to sleep. I wouldn't be able to do all those things if I only moved in anxiety all the time.
Does your mom watch the podcast?
Hell no.
And I think that's important, right? Like, if you want to get to know your adult child, like, you should probably look at what they're doing. Like,
you know,
if she watched
if
she watched your podcast, like your dad, she might have some insight. Like, oh wow, he's put out 200 episodes. Like, that's what he's spending his time on. Or if she heard you say, I got 200 people connected to therapy, you know.
I believe in her, but that's not where she works. She's a helicopter mom, like true and true. And she knows it too, right? But like, you remember how I always make fun of the blades, like when you're a helicopter mom? When she looks into things, she looks into things to see who's talking about you, not what are you doing and who's it affecting, right? So when you look for the hurt and you find the hurt, no matter how good the rest of the work that you're doing is.
Oh, she's looking for negative comments.
The hurt is what she holds on to, and the hurt is what she sees. And that just lets me know she's been through a lot before I ever got here. So like, my responsibility in that is I just can't let her into every door that has a knob. So like, for example, when my mom came on Facebook, I said, hey, it's been great, guys. I was like, no, because like, what she has done in the past is she'll find out what I'm doing and she'll critique that, and then that will become every discussion after. So you can't grow if someone is always having a discussion about every single step you're taking, because you start to walk different, because you start to hear the voice and you start to hear the critique, and it's like, nah, that's not good. Even she follows me on Instagram now, and what she does, like if I open up my Instagram and DMs, you'll just see a whole bunch of links from Facebook, from like things that she's promoting or people's stuff that she wants me to see that she's doing work-wise. And when I'll see it, I'll be like, yeah, I saw it. It's like, oh, what did you think of it? Why didn't you comment on all this other stuff? And it's like, no, you're creating a responsibility that I've told you I don't want to be a part of it. That's why I left the thing. So even if she comes to YouTube to like see the interviews that we do, and she said, hey, here's her thing, always make us proud, right? It's never been, hey, I hope you're proud of what you're doing. So when it's always make us proud, that means whatever our standard of the work that you're doing that we're proud of is, keep doing that and we'll be proud of you. That's how it's always been, no matter whether it was football, school, what I'm doing now. She hates the fact that I'm in the nightlife industry because she's like, you're gonna get shot and killed. And it's like, your boy's been doing this for like 15 years. I don't know what to tell you. No bullets, no stabbings, no nothing. I hope to God that doesn't happen, but I can't show up to work thinking like that. That means I'm gonna make the wrong decisions with people that don't deserve to be handled that way.
Yeah, that's part of your mistrust.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, no. You just gotta be careful.
I think you also elevated a lot about the empathy that goes in. It's like the emotional intelligence of understanding where someone else is coming from with empathy, but not holding on to it to then make your decisions of how you're moving. But you have to consider it, right? And that's a level of emotional intelligence. And I think that oftentimes it's funny that like the generation before us, because it wasn't something that was focused on or that like is the necessity, and for many different reasons, survival, like life issues, like things, for whatever reason, I don't think that there's a strong understanding of how to balance those two things. It's really about my perception. It's very rarely about what is it that the other person needs and feels that I need to consider in this moment. But it seems like in this generation, oftentimes like our parents' kids, there's a little bit more of that because it's become more like popular, but more like accepted, right? Emotional intelligence is more accepted, and everything you just talked about, like that one piece of like self-awareness, but that also social awareness of the other person, is that balance. So you're able to maintain a healthy relationship with your mother, a good relationship. You're not in a bad place, but you're not getting what you need, and you're kind of like at this place, it sounds like, and maybe I'm analyzing you too much, but it sounds like you're at the place of, but I accept it, I'm just not going to push further in it. I'm not going to give more to it that I know is going to be taken and not appreciated.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, to add on to that, like I tell them, like for my parents, I'm very raw, so I'll be like, hey, I fuck with you guys, you just gotta do better. And I think it's unfair to expect them to do better if they don't know what they need to work on, and that's why I'm making myself available. Because like when it comes to my parents, I want to see, all right, what exactly do they want me to work on, and am I willing to actually hear them out and we really discuss it. So like I know with my mom, my dad has a short temper, but he's willing to listen until the temper happens. That's great. That's great. So when he's angry, I'm like, all right, he's angry, but we got some things done, right? For my mom, and I think it's because she's been so hyper dependent and so much in a survival mode bag, she needs to be heard. But her being heard isn't you just listening to her and considering it. Her being heard is she's telling you what to do. And that's not actually someone listening to you. That's only someone listening to your demands. Whether it's right or wrong, they're doing what you're saying. And it's like, nah, that's not good, because like I'm great with resentment. I like love what resentment looks like. Hey, I resented you. You had me messed up. We're gonna resent together. Like I'm very good on that. But I'm like, but I'd rather not have to. I don't want to have a resentment party between the both of us when we could have just done this differently. Like, as of late, my mom keeps saying, hey man, you know, don't, what she said to me last time I was home, she was like, don't forget where you've come from and who your parents really are. And I was like, no, that's not going to work. I've adopted families now, so I now have new moms and new dads that you guys accept. You guys have their numbers. We have a big group of people that I call mom and dad. I have like 3 dads, 4 moms, but it's like, we've accepted this dynamic. So even if you feel insecure, you got to be careful about where you're insecure, because we love these people and they love us back. So like, let's not diminish the relationship because you feel you have a strained relationship with me now. Those people have done a lot for me, and vice versa, and I've made time for them. Always on the phone with them if anybody ever needs advice. I have a sister here now over in Atlanta. I suck as a brother. I'm not the greatest brother. I'll say it to my siblings all the time. I could be better. But when we get on the phone, it'll be like 4 hours of really catching up and, oh, that happened, or how you handling this. Like, right now we're in a situation where my adopted Nana, she like has Alzheimer's, and it's like developing at an alarming rate. I've never been in that position before, but they've been in that position. But me not being in that position, I made it a point to have an interview with someone that has dealt with that, that's on the in my shoes side of things, for my mom when things hit the fan. And that was a year ago. And now things are hitting the fan, and I'm like, hey, here's the interview that I told you about to watch just in case. And the interview was built around how much are we not paying attention to the experience of caregivers when they're caring for these people, and what we need to be considerate about in this change of life when it happens for them. Mm-hmm. If I didn't care about this family the way that I did, I would have never thought that topic would be important on the mental health side, to have the interviews, to have the awareness, to share with the whole family. So now I've seen like 2 people in the family assume, oh no, I got this, it'll be fine. And it's like, no, that is full-time child care for the adult that needs to be taken care of when everyone's at work, which means whoever's taking care of them has to be someone similar from their past that they know, or that they're aware of, or that they could confide in, or at least recognize when it comes to how those things are playing out. And then as a family, what do we need to do to come together to be responsible, or to at least create relief for these adults? If these people were my family, I wouldn't care. So when my mom says that, I'm like, disagree. Yeah. But it's like, she's not there yet, but she understands if I say I disagree, it's not towards her, it's towards what she's feeling right now. Like, hey, like, I'm still your son. I'm your one and only son, but I'm now the son of other people too. So we got to consider their feelings now.
I think that goes back to what Mario was saying earlier. Like, the generation above us doesn't necessarily have the same emotional intelligence. So like, It takes a lot of emotional intelligence to have insight and reflect and consider how you're contributing to the poor relationship or lack thereof that you want to see change. Like, your mom's not thinking, I don't really look at what Juice is doing. So maybe that's why he's adopted these other parents. It's just like, I birthed you, you owe me something.
Yeah. It's a different, yeah.
And then, but to the point of what she said was, at the end, visit us more. And I said, I'll think about it. She said, what do you mean? I said, you're at work all the time. The client my mom takes care of right now is 100 years old. Like, she's literally 100 and some change now, right? You're about to be close to your high 70s. If I go home to visit you and you're not home, it's not going to be home for me, because I'm just visiting the house, not the woman and the husband that live in the house. So I've never made it a practice to visit empty houses. If you tell me to come hang out and you not hanging out with me, why am I here?
Right, yeah.
Right? But like, I don't lose it. I just make that observation. I say, hey, this isn't what you thought was going to happen isn't happening. Because if me visiting you means you want me to be at home in person, available to like share a secret with me for 2 hours, and then that's the visit, and I'll see you for the next 2 days, I'm going to be inclined to say no when there's an invitation to come and visit home. Like, I had a 4-year period I didn't have a key to my house in New Jersey, and I did not care. I can't get in. I got spots in Maryland. I got spots in Atlanta if I need to go. I got Texas. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I got folks in New York. Like, it's really okay. But there's I don't want to say mentality, but there's a reason you feel the way that you do. And it's like, hey, I got to be considerate of, dang, you didn't have a key to your spot in New Jersey. Also, when I said to my parents, hey, I don't have a key, there was a 6-month period that was not a priority. You don't want your son to have a key to the house when he told you 6 months he didn't have a key?
Yeah.
And then when I was home, all of a sudden it was, hey man, I still don't have a key. Oh yeah, we'll get to that. 5 days. And the last day, oh, let me get the key done. And it's like, nah, you guys don't understand where you're dropping the ball. Mm-hmm. For you, it's like, oh, I get it done eventually. But for me, as the child in the relationship and the young adult, and now the person who's like, we're all mutual adults, I'm like, we care about different things and what it looks like. So for you guys, it's, oh, we'll get it done eventually. But for me, it's like, now I counted every month I didn't have a key to the house. That's what I saw. I saw, if I voice something, things haven't changed where I say, hey, we need to get this done, and you guys say, eventually. So you stop asking permission, you just start doing what you need to do. That's all.
Those kind of coming from hurt places. Like when you said, visit us more, and the way you said it, and I don't know if that's how your mom said it, but I felt it.
No, that's how she said it.
I felt it because I felt like, this goes back to the emotional intelligence of a generation, is if I don't have the words to say that I'm sad, I choose the words that I have, right? Like, and I think so much of some of the behaviors that our parents have really come from hurt places, right? And instead of saying that, it becomes something else. And then you're coming from a hurt place too, right?
Oh, yeah.
And like, in that you're waiting for your parents to show you that they hear what you're saying. But like, and I don't know what the answer is to it, but I feel like so much of it goes back to we don't have honest, real conversations and communicate with each other about what's really the root of what we're feeling. Part of it is we don't know the root of what we're feeling ourselves, and so how can we do that? But if you do know the root and then they don't, that's like a parallel conversation, right? Because they're not really hearing you. So I feel like it's this constant cycle thing, and the only thing at this point I've tried to do, because I can only do so much for the next is break the cycle for my kids.
Yeah.
Like, this is part of that generational cycle breaking. I think like it's so many different things, but I think that one in particular is the power of real, authentic communication, and then creating the space for that vulnerability and that truthful communication and authenticity for our kids to show up the way of who they are, not who they think we want them to be, is the power of kind of trying to counter this, because it's like we're treading water while being like having water dumped on us at the same time, right? Like it's like we're swimming against the current, like all of it, right? And I don't think there is an easy answer to that. I just don't think, because I think it's so ingrained in this ether of a generation of adults that you don't change the way that you are. It's really hard to move and change that. So it's not an answer. This is where I am. It's just where I'm thinking about it, right? Like
I don't think anything that I've suggested is the answer. It's just what's starting to like, hey, let's work on this look like. And I think I'm really good on, hey, that's what I'm looking forward to. Not like, oh, we fix things. No, that's a mistake thinking you're fixing something. I think, and I say this all the time, I just judge you by your effort. Right? So when I say, hey, you're at work all the time, the question is, if I'm around and you know I'm coming around, are you going to be at work less? And if not at work less, when you're home, are we going to just sit down and hang out? Like, my mom doesn't know what hanging out with me looks like. And I'm actually not a big drinker, so it's not like he gets drunk all the time or he does these things. I don't have a lot of annoying habits. We have great conversations in the very rare moments we have great conversations in person, but she can't help but listen to that little voice that says, hey, ask about the thing. hey, talk about the thing. He's gonna be pissed, but do it. And it's like, you gotta do better with handling that. That's not, because like, if something isn't my responsibility, you know I'm good for it, that's not my responsibility. I don't know what you're doing there, but that's not my responsibility. And I don't take it personal from her specifically. I actually do a really good job of diffusing things. The question is, does she take my responses personal after? Because like, you know, anytime I've left home, I'm leaving in the middle of the night. I'm not like, oh, it's the afternoon and I was available. Nah, I'm Batman. In my family, when I come through, they say, hey, how long are you here for? You guys know how long I'm here for. Okay, tomorrow? Maybe tonight, you never know. And I've been that person for 10 years, but I explained that to my sister in our heart to heart. I don't know if I got to tell you about me and my sister had a heart to heart. Yeah, no, we had a heart to heart. And I told her, I was like, I'm not home because of the friction between mom and dad and myself. But I don't want to do that to you. So if there's days you want me to pull up and we hang out, let me know, because I don't want to offer them this thing and you're cut out. Especially when you tell me dad didn't tell me that when you had that convo with him, that it applied to me too. And I'm like, you know, there's only so many times I have the same conversations, but I care about your opinion. I care about you as my sister. I want to be there for you as a brother. If me as a brother looks like you want me to be more available, cool. If you want me to be less available, cool. But I don't want to find out what you need through my parents when I can just talk to you, because we're siblings. That's how it works. Now, if you think things sucks and you think you're by yourself for Christmas and Thanksgiving and everything else like that, that's valid. But unfortunately, I need to work on things like this with them now, because look at what waiting to see what the other party will do has gotten us. It's gotten us to the status quo, and that's not going to work.
So do you have a point in your head, or like do you foresee yourself getting to a point where you just like accept that they don't have the capacity to change?
I don't know about that. I'm hard-headed. I'm great on the hard-headed part, but like I'm also great at cracking jokes through the pain, right? So when I had that talk with my dad, I could see the gears turning for him very fast. And we talked about like 7 other things outside of that, but what I said to him was something I could tell he's thought about and he's wanted to bring up, but he's never brought up. And I asked him, hey, I can't always be the person that brings up the important conversation, especially when it deals with us, because like I don't know what the hell's going on in your head. I just know you're an attractive black man, that's my dad, that's busy all the time, and when I see you is when I see you, but we don't call each other. But when I do call each other, we don't have a lot of mutual topics, but we're into the same thing, right? So he loves tennis, I don't do tennis, I do football. He loves football, I'm not the same fan as him. So for him, he's like a true Giants fan. Blue all the way, right? But I did professional trials for 7 years, so the way I look at the game is different. The way I feel about the business is different. When decisions are made, I may not feel as personal about it as you do. I'll say when a company is doing, that's a dumb decision. They shouldn't have done that business-wise. They made that personal. It should never be that. And for him, he's amazed at that and proud of that. But there's also a part of me that's like, hey, when I did tryouts, you weren't, like my dad in my 5th year of doing tryouts was like, wow, you really have a chance. And I was like, what did you just say? Wait, I've been doing this for 5 years and you said, wow, you really have a chance? Wait, so it took 5 years for you to believe in the me that I've been believing in this whole time? So it's like, there's a lot of just different conflicts that naturally exist there, and it's like, you just got to pick and choose, because not everything that I've had with him that's either an issue or realization is his battle. So when it comes to us talking, like I get on the phone, he'd be like, hey D-Man, how you doing? That's what he calls me. He always calls me D, and then D-Man, it's kind of like a superhero thing, right? Which is adorable, because I'm like, I'm D-Man, right, to my dad. But also the topics are, I'm talking to him, and us catching up is me talking to him. But when it comes to getting anything out of him, you gotta hold on tight if you get something. And then he's really talented at avoiding topics and having reservations and not talking about stuff. And then you're sitting there like, if I was around, would we talk more? Or is this just who you are? Because like, I feel like I'm interrogating Secret Service to have a talk with my dad. He's like, oh, well, man, I got this call coming, I got this business. It's like, boy, you ain't got nothing going on, stop playing with me. It's like, all right, cool, that's who he is.
Yeah, or black men are groomed not to share openly about things, right?
But in person, it's so different.
I think you talk more than the average black guy that
I've been hearing that. I've been hearing that. It's like, oh man, he's in it. But when you see me at work, it's super silent. Barely any words. Might crack some jokes here and there, but I'm here to get to the cash.
Maybe that's your dad's entire existence. Like he just never learned the gift of gab, or like he just never felt safe having open conversations.
I think it's the safe part. But like when it comes to feeling safe communicating wise, you also have to think about what has your past actions been in certain conversations that may make things not safe for you when you finally open up to. Right? So safety is people making space for you to be heard and not making space to always argue with you even if they don't agree. And my dad, if he doesn't agree with you, the whole room feels it. Because what he does if he doesn't agree with you, which is really funny, is he'll go to the person in the next room and be like, hey, all right, so let's say, and he'll do a whole situation, and it's like, fam, they can hear you. they can hear you in the next room.
I hate when people do that.
and then when you do it to people who live in similar spaces, when you leave, that's probably the topic of, hey, why is he doing that when we know what he's talking about? Or when you do it, everyone knows, oh, you must have just argued with so-and-so, and I'm the middle party to have the discussion with.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, you've pissed in a punch bowl now. No, we can't drink the punch no more, man. That's what it is. You know what I'm saying?
Your
so it's
dad
like,
is a sore loser.
which is great. Which is great. Because, like, I didn't know that's what a sore loser looked like. And then when I realized it, I was like, oh, you're competing. You're competing a lot. And we just want to be around you.
Right.
But, like, you being a sore loser doesn't mean you're not hurt. It just means you guys disagree, and that's it. Like, disagreements don't always have to go with a house burning down. But if you keep lighting matches, then you're going to start burning some wood here and there.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
Creative friction.
Yeah.
Creative friction is what the goal is, right? Like, we're able to work through the disagreement and hear each other and, like, not shut it down.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that just all goes back to, like, you know, generational, but also, like, as a man, as a black man, right? Like, if I don't talk about emotions, and I'm certainly not thinking about my own and, like, the process for anybody else, and, like, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. You're pushing in places where discomfort is not the place people want to be in right now, and that's a hard thing to do, I think. And I guess, like, I think for me at this point, when it comes to family, and it's sort of worked out, is that I just let go and kind of, like, my hope. It's how I run life. I think, like, is like I have this faith that it's gonna get better, but nothing gets better when you push it, right? Like, it's the things that happen naturally and organically that are meant to happen the way they're supposed to happen, and you can't push people into things, and you can't push moments into places that they're not meant to be at the time. Like, you can only plant the seed and believe and let it go, and, like, you've done that at this point, and I think it's like having faith that you believe it can be better, and sometimes that's all that it needs to be, and it comes together. Because it's fun, like you said, the question was, like, have your parents watched it? My mom, it's my 4th season. For the first time ever, my mom watched my episodes of Pain to Power, and she had never ever watched anything, and it was just this past year, and she called me, and it was such a, like, huge moment. And she was like, you know, I watched the show. It's interesting what the lady said. You know, she talked about, like, it made me think about my own childhood and how, you know, there were things that we should have thought about and we should have, like, realized were hard, but we never talked about them. That was all she said. Like, she didn't go deeper, but that was as far as she could go. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
Because I know the dynamic of our relationship is because of all that stuff. So that, like, little bit, but I had let go. I had totally let go. I don't share my stuff with my family, like, but I think, like, that moment was, she saw me, but she saw the validation of even, like, what my work is. And you're gonna have that, right? It's the moment when it's gonna happen, and it's like you've done all the things to plant the seeds for it to happen.
Man, thank you.
You're doing a good job.
No, I appreciate that. I think the funniest conversation to come out of that discussion with my dad was he finally admitted that he was upset I chose the hood over the suburbs.
You chose the hood
over the suburbs, which sounds like a crazy statement out loud. All right, so I'm from East Orange, New Jersey, right? East Orange is right at the bottom or left of Newark, which is Brick City, which was known for carjackings.
Left of, are you saying east or west of Newark?
Newark, like not New York, like
I know.
New Jersey.
I'm saying, you're saying left. I don't know what that means.
It's probably east or west. I don't know. I just know it's in one of those areas, right? Right? So when we moved from East Orange, to Maplewood when I was like around 11, 12. So development-wise, my mom was in East Orange, New Jersey. So even when I moved out of East Orange and we moved to Maplewood, when I was a patient advocate, I was a patient advocate in East Orange, right? Now, that means your whole summer for 4 years, even when you're in high school, you may wake up in Maplewood, but you're in East Orange. And where you are environment-wise is where you just are, right? Now for fun, my dad thought I would have been in like South Orange, New Jersey and Maplewood to like do fencing and be a part of the swim team. I hated the swim team. I told you about the embarrassing Speedo photo that I had, right? That I had to take for my mom that she had on display. It was crazy. It was always on display, every single family thing. I remember every single year I would come home after I got that picture of when I was like right before hitting like my main teen years, and I'd be like, why the fuck is that on display? Why did you put that? You know, when kids get the bronze shoe, she put that to replace the bronze shoe photo. And I said, this is madness. So now I took the photo. It's in one of my Bibles somewhere in the house, right? But he was upset that I chose the hood over the suburbs because he felt we moved to this great place, even though, what's the name of the folks who live in Ironbound? It's a Spanish-speaking, Portuguese folks who owned the house that we were in East Orange. They started putting alley cats in the back steps to piss all over the back steps to run us out of the house so it would smell bad. That's the kind of situation we were in East Orange. The house that I was like born and raised in before moving to Maplewood. Because I only lived in 2 houses between Maplewood and East Orange. And my cousins were in East Orange too, right? I'm giving you this background to show that like all my incentives, friendship-wise and family-wise and work opportunity-wise, was in East Orange, which is the hood. And you felt some type of way about that, but it's like, hey, if this is how it's set up, I'm not gonna fight it, right? Even though we're in better. So even when it came to like being a part of dance crews, and even when it came to like playing sports, I always made sure that I surrounded myself with people that dealt with conflict, because when I was in the suburbs, I was like, I need a certain amount of tension in life to develop. That's always just how I've been and how I've viewed myself. Like, when I get better at things, it's because there's tension, it's because there's anguish, it's because there's anger, it's because there's disappointment, and I need that to develop to know how to handle that, because that gives me the ability when it's time to be kind. This is what kindness looks like, and this is what the opposite of it looks like, right? So when we were driving back to Penn Station before coming back, I brought that up, and he's like, I really always hated that you chose the hood over the suburbs. And I said, well, what was in the suburbs? He's like, you had opportunities. I was like, everyone is too nice. I was like, the world's not a nice place. If I didn't learn how bad of a place the world was before I went to college and before it was time for me to take care of myself, that would have destroyed me, because I would have thought to myself, why aren't people nice like where I come from? What's going on over there that no one does a better job of just hearing each other out, and we could just talk about things and people don't fight? And it's like, people fight all the time. If you accept that people fight all the time, you'll know what it looks like to diffuse a fight. If you accept that conflict that's going to happen, you'll know what it looks like when conflict happens and when it develops up to it, and you'll know how to stop it before it happens. I was like, I was going to learn that in the suburbs. When I went to like go do fencing and kickboxing and all this other stuff, the critiques were like so positive. Oh, all you got to do is this kick and you'll be better. And that was it. I was like, so there's no problems or anything else? Like, nah, just lose some weight and that's it. And it's like, there was never the push that I needed towards things. And the suburb that I was in specifically, because not everyone is there, it's just that was what my experience was. I was like, it was very hard to get excited for everything that was going on, because to me, from someone who didn't have a lot, from a family that always worked for things, it just looked like everyone had too much and there wasn't enough drive there. And I was like, I don't do well with that.
I don't know much about Maplewood, but just like knowing suburbs, like there would have been another type of conflict that, like, I don't know that you want your black son to get used to dealing with, right? Yeah. The other thing is, like, everything your dad said about being mad that you chose the hood over the suburbs, that was all about him and his sacrifice, and like he wanted you to become a doctor so that he could be proud. Like, that had nothing to do with like, you or your success or who you are.
I am super aware, but I was like, he's allowed to feel how he feels, though. I was glad he finally got off his chest, but it's like, again, it was me bringing it up that led to him getting it off his chest. And then, like, as I got on the train, I thought to myself, I was like, I can imagine how many other things are rolling around in his head that he'll never talk about unless I bring it up. And I'm probably not going to, because that's irresponsible.
Irresponsible
to roll around in his head.
Well, he doesn't have the language. Like
And-
she's saying,
and
you're
he
the
can't.
you're the
I think
impetus. You're the one
The
Yeah,
only
but
thing you
there's
can do
a-
is to ask the question to find out what's in his head.
Yeah.
You can't roll around in his head.
Yeah, but that's not taking care of me if I start doing that.
And then that's what, if you
Yeah.
know that it's not even worth it, then you don't.
Yeah, it's not. I'm just
And
proud
then
of
you
who he's been so far and what he's working on. Like,
And
us
even-
doing that and him being able to have the conversation, so we
that's
good.
what I'm saying. Like,
we
he
good.
told you, but he told you something that he didn't
Yeah.
tell you all those
Yeah,
years.
it's like,
so
hey,
you
we
got
good.
perspective.
Yeah.
And you understand enough of what that is because you can see, oh, okay, it's a you thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's the expectation, it's what you sacrifice, and that's why it bothers you.
Yeah.
And you can move accordingly to
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I always let him know on the way out when I leave to head back to DC. I've let him know a bunch of times, like, hey, I hope you know and you understand that I really am proud of who you are and what you're trying to be. Because I was like, I only know what you show me. So obviously, either the rest of it is none of my business, or you don't want to be a burden to the people around you. And I was like, I get that, but like, you just got to understand we're actually here for you, not just when we see you in person. And that's what the issue is for all of us right now.
I think that's part of acceptance. Like, you're not gonna ask the questions because you know it's gonna be harmful to you in some way. So like, you just accept. He's not a talker, and we're gonna disagree, and he's gonna storm in the other room and bring the little man in.
Yeah, if she goes downstairs or he goes outside to the garden, I'll be like, look at him, talk to his plants. Beautiful.
My mom and my brother do that to me. They will call me on the phone actually. Jorie, what is boric acid used for? I'm like, can I get a little bit of context?
That's super important. That's super important.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's super important. Yeah. You are so impressive. Like,
Why you say that?
I just think about stories that you've like told me about yourself when it comes to your family, or your stride to like create a space for yourself. Like, when you tell me about your handlement of mom on your end, or when like, lines are crossed, I'd be like, there you go, Jorie. You protect your energy, Jorie. There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah. But you also, I think you do a good job of not letting it destroy the you that's left as you like figure things out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the most important
Therapy
part.
is very important. It helped me a lot.
It is. And also your implementation, you do a great job of implementing things.
Thank you. I spent a lot of money on therapy. I don't want to use it.
That's facts.
But
So,
implementation is the hardest part.
yeah.
That's
I have not found that to be the hardest part. The hardest part is probably like the realization for me.
Discovery.
It's like, I can't believe it. Then I'm like, all right, what do I have to do to change it? I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
Implementation has definitely been the hardest part for me. The discovery hits you. Like, it hits you for sure.
Yeah.
But it's in the moment, right, that it's the hardest to draw it on. Like, in that moment of, my tendency is to want to do this, but what my brain is telling me and what my learning and what my therapist and what I've gone through and figured out is saying I'm supposed to do this, but to now shift myself, because our emotions can control us, right? Like, to this other thing is a challenge. Like, it's a real human challenge, right? Because I think that's, to me, like, in looking at how I watch people in the work that I do and in the conversations that I have, like, to take theoretical ideas and even realizations and put it into practice in the moment is just not easy because of the way neurology works, right? Like, I mean, like, in terms of like our brains when we're in like particularly an emotional state. So I think like it depends on what we're implementing, but like when we're in emotional states, our brains are releasing, right, like cortisol. So you have so many other things. In survival mode, you're not thinking about anything but survival. And survival mode can be, I'm in this freaking angry moment where like I've gotten this page long of text and I'm angry and I want to say all the things to just cuss this person out, but I can't. I gotta like stop and reassess everything and think about where am I in my emotions. Like, it's a lot of steps. It's a lot of steps is what it is, right? Like, I gotta in that moment when the car with my dad, right? I gotta assess, where am I? What am I feeling? How did that hit me right now before I say anything that's going to trigger the people around me? And that is hard work.
Yeah.
Like, I just think that's naturally hard work. And sometimes I think being empathetic people, being the more even keel people is like a burden in and of itself, because how come they don't have to do none of that? Like, how come they could just write pages and pages of stupidity, or like they can cuss people out, but I gotta stay centered?
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, now that you say that, it does take a lot of energy, and it is pretty exhausting to always be like considering how things could go and how I should respond and react based on what I've learned. Yeah.
So what has made it easier though for you in that implementation for you?
I think it's just practice, but I wasn't even aware of how exhausted I was until my therapist recently said, like, hey, you're spending a lot of background energy. Like, you know, your phone battery dies so quickly. It's because you have so many apps open. It's like, yeah, I never thought about that, but that is exactly how I feel. Like, I'm always going over in my head before I say something, is that the right thing to say, or could it be diffused, or should I respond? And so, yeah, I mean, it takes practice, and I have seen the results of it, so that's probably why I keep doing it. But I do want to just like stop and like relax. Like, yeah, I mean, can I just be a flawed individual without judgment? Like,
around here,
around here, yeah, but like, you know.
Yeah.
But that's like, does that go back to the whole thing of the statement we made? Like, in terms of, we talk about it in mothering, but I feel like, is it a thing that like is like an expectation of just self sometimes of individuals to not allow that flaw? Like, we have to show up in the best way for the people around us.
I don't think that I feel that expectation from people around me. I think it's an expectation I have for myself, because I don't like conflict, right? So let me manage my own behaviors and reactions to mitigate the fallout and the conflict that might come. I deal with this a lot at work, actually. Like, I choose my words very carefully, because the patient population, or the parents in that patient population, can be very volatile. Like, I've had people yelling at me, standing up, putting their fingers in my face. So no, I'm not going to just come out and say that your child is obese. I'm going to like use other words so that you're not offended, even though you being offended has nothing to do with me. But like, still, it's easier for me to like, yeah. So that we can just get through it. Yeah. So
I'm doing a great job.
Thanks.
That's a hard thing, and to do it every day in work, and then just in life in general, right? Like, those are two places to have to hold it. So how do you give yourself time and grace to just take care of yourself?
Like, after work, you know, I'm single, so I don't have a partner or anything to come home to, but after work, I am silent. I don't want to talk on the phone. I'm just going to zone out on like trash TV. Even if my brother calls and I answer, he's like, wow, you sound so tired. I'm like, yeah.
I'm zoning, bro.
Did you know what my brain has been doing all day, right?
On my days off, I do like pedicures. Like, I've developed a wellness plan, so I do pedicures. I go to the spa quarterly, like Ritz-Carlton or like Salamander or somewhere nice. I treat myself to nice dinners. I go on vacations. I try to spend time with friends that feel me. Yeah, so those are the ways that I want to.
She also makes bomb mac and cheese.
No, she does.
You tasted it?
Not yet, but it's in
That
my
sounds
fridge.
delicious. I can't wait to try some. It's Thanksgiving coming, so it should be coming. But like, did you always know to do that for yourself, or did you have to learn to take care of yourself?
Yeah, that was a learned skill. I've been 4 years in. So I spent a lot of time, a lot of my life, I was taught that you need to sacrifice in order to reach the better outcome. So like, that's all that medical education is, right? Like, you are delaying gratification to the umpteenth power, right?
Are you hurt, or are you injured?
Are you hurt, or are you injured? That's something that my father used to say to me, like, as a young child. because he was a college athlete, and so that was how he was trained. Like, you know, you're gonna get out there and play on your knee that's been injured because you're here to play basketball, not really for an education, right? So he kind of transferred that to me and my brother, and so like I was taught never to quit anything. But my mom, on the other hand, she's kind of like if it doesn't feel good, don't do it. You know, so it was hard for me to adopt that way of thinking, but I think that's kind of what I've leaned towards now in my adulthood, since therapy is just kind of like, if there's a job that I don't like, you know, I'm not going to stay there. Like, I have to change it up and do something different. Yeah, so definitely for like the majority of my life, I did not put myself first. Like, my grandmother used to always tell me, pay yourself first, because I would always just like either really save my money or like pay all the bills and not do anything nice for myself. But that's something that I've adopted too. She's passed away now, but like I always keep that in mind. Like, okay, I'm gonna save $2,000 just to do whatever I want, you know, for the month, or you know, I'm going to Greece by myself. I don't care if nobody. Well, I've been, but like these are thoughts. These are thoughts that I've had. Like, you know, I'm gonna go to Greece even if nobody else can afford to go with me. Like, I'm going by myself, or you know, I'm gonna go to Thailand. I'm thinking about going to Africa, actually, like doing a tour from west, east, north, south. So that's my next plan. But like, yeah, those are the ways that I try to take care of myself.
See how dope she is?
Though, but that's huge, and I think like that's like, I applaud you, because I don't, like you said, I think there's a lot of women in particular who get that message of like sacrifice and just keep doing, right? And you come last. So like, one, kudos your grandma, right? Like, she knew it. Like, that's not often what we hear from women, you know, from our other generations. But like, the fact that you not only know about it, you implement it to the point of like, it's a routine. Like, I'm in awe of that, because I've yet, like I told you this week, didn't you sleep? Didn't I? Like, I have yet to internalize it to a place where it becomes like a habit. I know that like in the back of my mind it's important, and every once in a while, like, I'm going on a trip, I'm excited about it, right? But it took a lot, like, and even still, like, one of my sons was like, well, but he's, you know, my youngest brother is going to be in town. Why are you going to go on a trip? Like, what is he going to think? And I'm like, wait, what? How, like, I work, like, I earned this. I should be able to go, right? He's a grown boy. He's going to be with his dad. Like, there's no reason, but like, those are like the messages. So I think like, it's a lot to, not everybody does it. Not everybody does it, but it's really important. And the fact that it's part of a routine it says a lot about your evolution of knowing yourself and knowing your mental health and knowing what you need for your mental health. And that's, like, there's a lot of pieces to that, right? And I'm sure you learn that, like, through these conversations that you have, right? Like, there's so many layers to mental health.
Yeah. I think I'm privileged because I've done this work before I had children. I think once you have a child, you don't really have space. For a long time, you don't have space to even consider how you might be able to grow, or like things that you might be able to do better for yourself. So I think it could be a little bit more challenging.
Or finding the capacity for that.
Great, I tell you, don't get married young, don't have kids young. Like, that's like my first thing when I meet young people. I'm like, just like live it up, single, figure out yourself. Spend as much time as you can knowing what's important to you, what you want, before you bring anyone else into your life and world.
Yeah, and I think that's important for disrupting transgenerational cycles, right? Like, you're just going to keep repeating the same things over and over if you never take the time to sit and understand where everything comes from.
All right, well, this has been another episode of Mental Health Today. Appreciate you guys for pulling up. Like, subscribe,
share, and comment.
Hey, thank you to Pain Power for being here on the platform.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Please make sure everybody follows me. And Brown Girl Interrupting. It was so nice to meet you, and I appreciate this opportunity to share.
Okay.
Yeah, check it out. Pain to Power every Sunday, 8 p.m.
Where can the folks find you?
They can find me on YouTube on my channel, Brown Girl Interrupting, on TikTok, on Instagram, on Brown Girl Interrupting, and on my website for my writing, and soon to be more that's coming with the updated website on www.browngirlinterrupting.com.
All right, appreciate you.
Nice.
Thank you. Appreciate you both, and appreciate the conversation.